Welcome to the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. We are here each week to help you lead more confidently and make a bigger difference, both professionally and personally. This episode is sponsored by From Manager to Remarkable Leader, Kevin's flagship workshop based on his proven leadership model. Learn more at remarkablepodcast.com/manager. And now here's your host, Kevin.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Live with Kevin. Welcome to a live episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. So glad to be with you. If you are a regular viewer of the lives, you'll notice some differences. Difference number one is Kevin's not in his normal location. Yeah, Kevin's in a hotel room. Difference number two is you will notice that we're not doing this at noon Eastern time, which we typically do. So if you're finding this later and you want to join us in the future, noon Eastern time, Mondays is when you're typically going to find us, although today is atypical, but it's going to be fantastic. So welcome, and let's dive in. Large amounts of time and money are invested in leadership development every year, and the return on that investment by almost every measure is woefully low. Is there something wrong with leadership development? And if so, can we fix it? Well, our guest today and I share some opinions on this topic, and I'm excited to dive into this discussion with her and with all of you. So welcome to another live episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. You can get all future live episodes right here, wherever you're watching, but you can also interact with us and see episodes sooner and all of those things by joining our Facebook or LinkedIn groups. Just go to remarkablepodcast.com/Facebook or remarkablepodcast.com/LinkedIn to do that. And so whether you're here live or whether you're here later or whether you're here listening to the podcast, I want you to imagine that you're joining us for a cup of coffee. And if you are here live, share your questions and comments and ideas, because they will make for a better conversation now and eventually a better podcast episode as well. Today's episode is brought to you by our new book, The Long Distance Teammate. There you go. If you work remotely and want to be effective, more productive, more engaged, and more connected, this book will help you get there, because there's a big difference between working from home and being an engaged and effective remote teammate. You can learn more, get a copy, and even get a sample chapter, all at longdistanceteammate.com. And now, without any further teasing or ado, let me introduce to you my guest today. There she is, Miss Jennifer. Jennifer Mackin is the leader of two consulting firms. She's the CEO of Oliver Group and the president and partner of Leadership Pipeline Institute US. As an author and speaker with over 25 years of consulting experience, she is a recognized leadership development influencer, having worked with CEOs, human resources managers, leadership development leaders, that's a mouthful, and entrepreneurs and other senior managers in all industries. She is the author of this book, Leaders Deserve Better. Leaders Deserve Better, a Leadership Development Revolution. She earned her Bachelor of Science in Marketing from Indiana University, where my daughter will be graduating shortly, as well, also with a degree in marketing from the Kelley School. And she has a master's, an MBA from the Owen School of Management at Vanderbilt. She lives in Louisville. She is our guest today. And yes, I said it right. It's Louisville. Jennifer.
You did say it right.
There you go. Kentucky, for those of you that are the uninitiated. I'm not going to say it any other way. You'll have to figure it out. Jennifer, welcome. I'm glad that you're here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here with you, Kevin, and talk about this really cool subject that we both love.
Well, anytime you can get a smart person to talk to you about something they're passionate about, it's a pretty good sign that it's going to be a good conversation, right? So, one of the things I like to do, so again, I want to say this for everyone who's joining us live. You can share your comments and your questions anytime along the way. I will see them. We can engage that, connect them into the conversation as appropriate. We'd hope for you to do that. And you can just tell us where you are watching from. And if you have questions and you're not watching live, but watching later, still share them. I'll still see them. And if we can get you some answers, we'll do that as well. And there we go. Here's my consistent friend from Mali. So we've got folks from around the world with us tonight, Jennifer. That's
exciting. That's exciting.
And so before we go too deep into the topic, I think it's always helpful for people to know a little bit more about my guest, in this case, you. So tell us a little bit about your journey. You probably didn't wake up as a 5-year-old or 8-year-old or 12-year-old even saying, I want to be a leadership development consultant.
No, I didn't. I didn't think that. I did think early on that I always kind of was drawn toward leadership. Always maybe just a child that really kind of wanted to be in charge all the time, which isn't really what leadership is, come to find out. But started very early with that sort of personality traits. But so my journey, I have been in this business a really long time, in leadership development and helping people reach their potential in one way or another for a really long time. And I find that I am so stimulated by it still. And it's, this, it's challenging. We've never arrived. We've never figured it out. We've never checked the box and say, I am the leader I want to be, right? No one has arrived. So I find it super challenging. But I got into it through my family's business, and that's where it started, because I grew up with parents who really loved this stuff, loved leadership, loved assessments, and created a company to start helping leaders and organizations get better at hiring and developing people. And so I just heard it all the time, every day, every weekend, and just found it fascinating.
Every dinner table conversation. Jennifer, you are the first person that I've had on the show that sort of the growing up was a direct and very obvious, pointer to the end goal. I've had a couple other guests that had a similar-ish story, but none quite like this. So,
well, it wasn't a straight line, I can tell you that.
But this is where you ended up.
I did. I ended up, and I just love it. And I knew business early on was something that was appealing to me. But I also thought I had to kind of get out there on my own and make my way and not be a part of the family business, because people might think that that's the only reason that I'm in the organization. And so I kind of tried to go a different way, but I kept coming back to it and ended up coming full time all the way back in 1994. It's a long time ago.
Well, my dad was a farmer, had ag related businesses, and so we have that in common, in that we come from family businesses. Here's the other interesting thing. I'm sure I've never shared this on the show, and that is that there was a time when I thought when I finished school I was going to go back home, and Dad said, you can't come home right away. You got to go work for somebody else for a while. Otherwise, you'll never know. Now, it didn't end up that's what we ended up doing, but I always have thought that was such a wise thing for him to say to me, because it would have, I'm sure it's not what he wanted to say.
Right.
What he wanted to say is, come on home.
Please come back.
Right. And to me, that's one of the many leadership lessons I learned from him, was that he didn't do what I think he probably would have preferred. Yeah. Right. Which was would have just said,
and
arms are
needed
open,
you.
Come on home.
Yeah. So. Needed you, trust you. I think that's the really cool part about working with families, family businesses, is when you have that bond and that trust. I believe my dad thought I could do things that, beyond what most people could do. And he just had that belief, and I knew that, and I felt that every day, and that helped me be successful.
Well, listen, we could riff on that point.
We could
this entire show, because listen, for you, all of you listening as leaders, you're saying, well, wow, that would have been cool to be in a family business. But the underlying point of what Jennifer just said is so important, and you already know it. And that is, when you know that someone really trusts you, it changes how you will respond. It changes your performance. It changes your confidence and everything else. If you were watching Jennifer, even as she said it, you can see a difference in the countenance in her face and everything else. There's a lot to learn in that one statement, Jennifer.
Absolutely.
But that's not really why we came. We really came to talk about this book, and really the ideas in this book about the fact that there's a need for a revolution. You said it. We need a leadership development revolution. And so let's just ask this question: how big is the leadership development problem?
I think it's huge. I think it's huge. And I think that it's huge because leaders aren't ready for what we're dealing with right now, let alone what's coming in the future, which there will be other crises coming. There will be other things we need to do. And leaders, senior team leaders in particular, don't know what to do differently. That's why we need a revolution. We need to get the word out that there's a better way of doing it. That's what gets me excited about the book, is to talk about how do we change the environment within a company. Not necessarily do we need to change what we're teaching leaders. And I don't think that's changed a whole lot. What makes a good leader now is very similar to what made a good leader years ago. So that's not the problem, the content necessarily. It's more about how it's absorbed and how it's leveraged, that knowledge in the business based on what companies are doing or not doing to help their leaders put that in play, put that new learning in play.
Mostly not doing,
Mostly
as
not.
it turns out. So I think other than, hey, you say you want a revolution. Other than that, I think the big idea of the book, at least to me, is what you call the 4 drivers of leadership development success. So, I think for our listeners, and viewers, I want you to give them enough about that. Not so much that they won't go get a copy of the book, which they need to do, but to give them a sense of where you're headed with all of this. So let's just lay out for us those 4 drivers, because it isn't about content, as you said.
Right.
There's 100. Okay, maybe there's 1,000 people like what you do and like what we do that can give you great content. That's not where the gap is. So tell us about these drivers, about process, really, more than anything else.
Absolutely. So it's really the foundational pieces within a company. And the first one is really the most important, which is, if you think about the senior team's involvement and the alignment of the leadership team around their strategies, of course, which they're usually decent at having a strategic plan, but then to have a people plan that matches with it. That, I think, maybe 20% of companies have a people plan as part of their strategic plan, or separate, that's connected, so that you say, what do we need to be developing our leaders to do to get us from point A to point B? So that's the first one. That strategy is connected to people strategy.
Yeah, I just want to say something about that, because before I hit the live button and you and I were just chatting, we were talking a little bit about what's going on in the world now. And those of you watching live know this, but those of you that are watching or listening to the podcast later, we're having this conversation in the middle of April of 2021. And we were talking about how important the decisions organizations are going to make about when they bring people back, how they bring people back, how many people they bring back, all of those things. And I think your point right there is critical to that. Like, what is our people plan? What do we need from our folks today, tomorrow, next week, next year, 5 years out? And if you have that plan, the decisions about how to re-enter, if you will, are going to be easier. And one of the reasons so many people are struggling is they don't have that plan.
They don't have the plan, and the plan needs to be developed again and again, especially during so much change. So now, as you know and deal with every day, Kevin, it's about now, how are we going to work moving forward now that we can get back together in some sort of way? Do we want to? Should we? And every business is different. Every leader is different, and what they want and what they see. And it's just going to be a mess for a while. But if you could tie it to your strategies, what are you trying to do as a business? So then what are your key people and those key roles need to be doing and working, and with whom and how and all of that? That's the strategy and people plan being
driver
revised.
Number 1.
Yeah, driver number 1.
Number 2.
Number 2 is that leaders need to drive the development of their people. And I know that seems basic, but a leader's number 1 job is to develop their people and help them be ready for what they're doing now and what they want to do in the future and what the business needs from them in the future. But often it's handed off. It's given to someone else. They don't see it as a responsibility. They're not accountable for the learning and the development of their people. So that's number 2.
So I have a comment on that, not surprising. Yes. And then I want to go back to the comment that just came in from Facebook. You can take a look at that. But, my first job after college, both of my first two bosses both said the same thing to me. They already watched this podcast a long time ago, because their first comment to me, both of them, was, my job is to have you in my job and for me to not have a job. Right. And that is our job as a leader, is to develop not just to replace us, but to create an organization and a set of skills that can take us further than where we are today. Right.
Right. And there's so many things that can get in the way of that. I mean, we can put a lot of ownership on leaders, and it's really difficult. What we're asking is difficult. It's simple, but yet it's difficult. And so, and as I said at the beginning, I make mistakes all the time. And, one recently is I was just really getting into shifting some things and adding new services and getting excited about some of the things we're doing as a business and helping companies, and really forgot to check in with my team in a big way and ask a lot of questions before getting excited and rolling something out. So, I mean, I make the same mistakes all the time, but leaders need to be, part of their job description needs to even say those words that you're talking about, preparing other people to get ready. And that comment that your Facebook listener says about it, just, even if they have a people plan, it always seems to fall short. And if you think about, you have a people plan, but then the leaders need to execute it. And that's what I'm talking about, leaders leading the development. There are programs that come in all the time that are really strong, and those need to be there as well. We need to teach them exactly what you need from them as leaders, but we have to reinforce it. And that's the third driver, is the reinforcement. Reinforce and practice. And that is missing, as much as that makes sense, that is missing almost every time. Right?
99.5.
Yeah. So somebody goes to a couple of days of really great content and really gets their head into it and figures out what they want to do differently in the workplace. They come back in to piles high of work, to things, people needing things from them, and it just falls by the wayside. And if we don't practice it, if we don't put it in place, if we're not then held accountable for the new behaviors that we're learning, the new knowledge put in place, it won't stick. So that
takes us back to the leaders piece, right? Because if leaders know what that content is, if leaders are bought into that content, then my boss is going to help me be accountable and hold me accountable for what are you going to do, right, Kevin? Now that you're back, what are the 5 things? What are the 3 things? What's the one thing, whatever it is that you're going to do next, right?
There has to be a plan at the end, but there has to be some pre and post work for the leaders of the participants of all of those programs. Absolutely.
100%.
And then one piece that's really hard when you think about the last driver is that we need some face-to-face time with our peers in our learning. So it's not just during the learning, but after. So if you're with leaders and you're learning how to coach or how to build the right culture for your team, whatever it is, and then you come back in and you try some things, right? And some things work well for you. Some things are awkward or they don't seem to work the way you thought they would. So then you connect with your peers during that program of your learning, so you can hear from each other, learn from each other. That's how we really absorb information. Then you get back in and you sit down and you have some one-on-one conversations with peers and you talk about it. You get as a group together and get some coaching around, all right, what's worked, what didn't work, what do you want to try next time? So it could be face-to-face like we are tonight. That's how we have to do it right now. But I also think the more that we can have some conversations face-to-face, the better our learning is.
Not face-to-face with webcams, but face-to-face, honest to goodness, face-to-face. I have long said, Jennifer, that when organizations hire us or anyone to come in and say that 1 or 2 day thing, as you just described, that the bringing together of those leaders inside of that organization, in some cases, like across an organization, like what we're doing, ancillary. That's the real value. That's the lasting value. And if we can help we consultants, and so you as buyers of our services, if you can make sure that we're helping you hook that all together and create that community of learners that lasts beyond the event, then you got something, right?
You have got it. You have got it. I mean, all we have to do is tee up a topic, give some sort of foundation of learning, and then let them talk about it. And they will learn just through having those discussions about how it works within their company and what they've seen work and not work. And it's very valuable that way. And what's really cool is that we have a way now of measuring these 4 drivers.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's nothing out there like it where we can get the senior team, which really is aligning HR, the CEO, and the whole team around what are we doing well within these 4 drivers, and what are we struggling with and want to focus on in the future. So that's where we put our resources, right? And also, what are your strengths you're already doing today that you want to make sure you maintain? That'll be really, really important too. You don't want to throw everything good out and just start with new stuff, but it'll tell you also what to tout about how well you're doing within development, but also uncover and get alignment around how do you want to fix this? Because I do think if leaders thought there was a better way, they would do it. They would do something different, right? I just don't think they know what's going well and what's not going well to know what to do differently.
So you've built this assessment.
Yes.
A tool to help assess. And where can people learn more about that?
So if you go to jennifermackin.com, you can take a sample of the assessment. Thank you. Yes, you've got it right. Mackin sometimes a little challenging for people.
So let me just say it for everybody. Jennifer, JenniferMackin.com. JenniferMackin.com.
Yeah, simple, right? So they can go and take a part of the assessment, but then it's a full-blown assessment that can be done within your organization. But it'll give you a sense of what it is, because there isn't anything, again, like it. And they can get a chapter of the book there, too, to get a sense of what is the problem? Why is there a problem? And what are we trying to solve for that makes this revolution really important?
If you missed it, we're talking with Jennifer Mackin, the author of the book Leaders Deserve Better, A Leadership Development Revolution. We're talking about some of the ideas in it as we go. There's a lot we could unpack. And Jennifer, I'm confident that if one or the other of us went up or down I-65 to the other person's office, we would have a long conversation. I'm confident of that. But there's a couple of other things I thought that you've hinted at here that you talk about in the book that I think are useful. And one of them is, if learning is a process, ongoing, don't just stop with the content.
Right.
You talked about being able to get coaching from your peers inside of the organization.
Yeah.
But you outlined some ideas around a question I get asked a lot, which is, okay, when should we use an external coach? And there's some really great stuff about this in the book, and this isn't a test, but what are some of your thoughts about when should people consider whether you're talking now to an organization or whether you're talking to an individual leader who's saying, man, I should I avail myself? When do I avail myself of an external coach?
Right. I think it's an important question because historically and still now, unfortunately, some people still think of it as when someone's really not performing as a leader in the role. And I say that's too late, but still an opportunity that's worthwhile. But what I would say is using external versus internal is when you want added support for one. So you've got a leader that you're wanting to fast track. You're wanting them to take on some really important projects for the organization, move up quickly. You might want an outside resource that's just dedicated to them that can really put some extra time to them. That would be one reason to use an external coach. Using an external coach when a leader is just overwhelmed. I mean, I see leaders with 17 to 20 direct reports. Now, come on, they can't coach on a daily basis, all of them. And I've had CEOs say, I'm going to bring in a coach to augment what I am doing, to add some resources. Really, coaching is difficult work and not every leader is good at it. So also bringing a coach in who's really qualified to get a person to help them from point A to point B. Coaching is typically to have behavior change. Yes, you want to teach some some fundamentals perhaps through a coach, but usually it's about the behavioral side of things, right?
Yeah.
And so not every leader who coaches on a daily basis with their team knows how to help someone with some big change like that. And so those are some of the things that I see.
Yeah. They don't know how. They haven't done it often enough. They don't have confidence in doing it, even if they could. And it's a time and focus issue, right?
It is.
And so I don't think there's any question
Way
about
to
that.
summarize it, yeah.
You were lamenting that we often bring in the external coach as the last gasp kind of thing. Like, we got a problem here. Like, so think about, so here's how I like to help people think about it. Think about good coaching, external coaching perhaps, as a vitamin, not an aspirin. And so if we're making it an asprin, it might be too late, or we're,
I love that.
So there you go.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've, this episode, I think in some ways, and I knew it would be the case because of the nature of the book, it would have more of an organizational development focus than an individual leader focus. And so you've shared a lot of advice for things that organizations can do, and they certainly should go to jennifermackin.com and learn more about that assessment and all those things. But if I'm here as an individual leader and I'm saying, man, I like all the stuff Jennifer's saying, but unless I can get if I can't go buy 50 copies of this book and give it to everybody above me, like, what can I do? What's your advice to me as an individual leader if I'm inside of an organization? And I'm not saying it's a bad organization, but they're not really doing some of the stuff that you're describing. What's your advice to that individual leader who's watching or listening to help them apply some of what you're talking about?
Right. Well, I think the book is really to help individual leaders understand what good looks like when it comes to organizations that provide development in the right way. That's really going to elevate everyone and help the company hit their goals, right? So learning about what's important for development to stick, and then asking human resources leaders, asking your leader about what the company's thinking is on all of this, asking the questions about how do we do this? How do we not do this? What's important? So then when you are a leader and you can help your people directly with a lot of this, you can become that leader that is developing direct reports in a way that's going to help them be super successful in the rest of their career. So I think understanding your role in that, and just out of the gate, just taking some of that and putting that into play within your role and talking to your boss about it will be very, very helpful to helping the organization uncover what they need. And if enough do it, then it's going to be enough pressure that senior leaders might spend some time on it.
And like everything else, your leadership influence starts where you are, regardless of where you are. That's the underlying principle from what Jennifer just said. That's really good advice, Jennifer. I appreciate that. So sort of one last check. Anything that we didn't talk about that you wished we would have, or I thought Kevin would ask me that, and he didn't. Anything?
Well, no, I have a lot of things on my mind that I know we could talk about for a long, long time, but I think you've really covered a lot. And I think right now I would just say, leaders, give yourself a little grace right now. Give yourself some time to reflect and some time away right now. And I'm guessing July won't be any different way if you're listening then versus April. We're just under a lot of pressure, and we want to give ourselves a break. Think about where you're spending your time and think about where it should be spent, and help your team members. Be vulnerable with them about what you're going through. Ask them lots of questions about what they're going through, and help make this transition that we need to make with going back to work in some way, whether it's remote, partial remote, back together, whatever it is, it's going to be a big challenge. So I think getting prepared mentally for that challenge, again, another one, I would say is just really important.
Excellent. So enough of the seriousness. Now I've got to ask, I'm shifting gears on you, so get ready. I want to know what you do for fun. Like, I know you like your work. I get that, and that's wonderful. And what do you do for fun, Jennifer?
Well, I spent a lot of time with my family, and most recently we just got a new puppy. So that's so fun and hard.
I was going to say,
Really
I
fun.
can give you other adjectives besides only fun.
Yeah, so anything outdoors, whether it's with the puppy or not, I love to cook. I love to read. I love to any sort of skiing or water skiing, snow skiing, anything outdoors. I really love, and spending time with friends. Just, I mean, right now it's been just mostly around the fire in the backyard, but connecting with people that way is really important to me. So that's what I do.
Perfect. And I know that, like me, you're a reader. So I'm
Yeah.
curious, what are you reading, or what's something you've read recently that people might be interested in?
Well, this is one that's not necessarily a business book, but maybe should be, and it's called Cast. And so it's from Isabel Wilkerson, and she really gives a history of racial disparity. And I wanted to read it because I wasn't sure I had the education that I should have had about how we got to this place. And so I'm still in the middle of that.
And the title again is
Caste, Caste.
Got
So
it.
we have caste
Yes.
in our culture, and so it's a difficult read for lots of, not difficult meaning it's hard reading, but it's also hard to read because you're seeing exactly in your face what has happened in America, and it's really, but it's so informative. I loved it. I'm
Awesome.
still finishing it.
Well, that's okay. I didn't say what have you read. I said, what
Yeah,
are you reading?
I'm reading.
It's a perfectly fine answer. I love that.
But
So,
also, I pretty much get snippets here and there. I don't know about you, but I like Medium. I like HBR, Harvard Business Review. I like New York Times. I mean, I'm kind of more of a snippet reader that way, but then I love to get into a book too. So, yeah.
perfect. So, other than Jennifer Mackin, where else do you want to point people? Anything else you want to say about where people can learn more about you, the book, anything at
Yeah.
all? Any place you want to point people?
Sure. You could also go to olivergroup.com. That is the consulting firm that I've been leading for many, many, many years. And we've been doing such great work. And you'll see all kinds of different examples of the things we've done and do with our clients to help them. And then you can also go to leadershippipeline.com. And that's the other consulting firm that I lead for the United States, part of our business.
All right. So look at this. Look at this. Akram says you should read The Remarkable Leadership Book.
Oh,
One of my books. He's just trying to.
I will. I absolutely will. And look forward.
He's just trying to make me feel better, and of course it worked because I put it up there.
You feel
So,
good, right? Please, everyone, get Kevin's books, not just that one.
So I have a question, but before we go, everyone,
Yeah.
I have a question for all of the rest of you. I've been asking Jennifer, and she's been so gracious in giving us her wisdom. But my question for all of you is this: now what? What are you going to do with this? It's the question that Jennifer and I would both say after you've been to any sort of training. Okay, maybe you thought it was good. Maybe you thought there was good stuff. Maybe you're nodding your head. What are you going to do when you leave? And so for the last 33 minutes, we've been sharing and giving you plenty of things to think about. The only question is, what are you going to go take action on? It's that will make this of value. Because if you just wanted entertainment podcasts, you probably could have done better than us. I mean, hopefully this was enjoyable and interesting, but let's be serious. You chose this because you want to be more effective. You chose this because you're on a path to becoming a remarkable leader. And so the only way that's going to happen, and I think you would agree with me, Jennifer, is if you take action. No action, no learning loop, no practice, no chance, right?
That's right. That's right. Everyone can take a piece of this revolution and move it forward. And that's what excites me, is we can do this collectively.
That's a perfect way to end, everybody. Jennifer, thank you so much for being with me.
Thank you, Kevin.
With us. It was an absolute pleasure. And I'm so glad that we had the chance to do this. And for all of you, I hope that you did find it useful. I hope you found it entertaining. I hope you know what you're going to take action on. And I hope you'll be back next week for another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.